Well, politics certainly can be one strange business, and let me give you a little bit of an example. I'm going to talk to this guy right now. His name is Glen Pearson. And you know, it's interesting because Glen was elected in a by-election in November, right?
That's right.
For London North Centre by-election, and I actually campaigned against this guy. Strange. I was an independent at the time. He ran against Elizabeth May, the Green Party leader, and a formidable NDP candidate as well in that riding. And anyway, Glen cleaned up, won the place. So, you forgive me?
Nothing to forgive. It's fine. That's politics. No problem. And Elizabeth was a great candidate to run against.
And I think actually we probably both would agree she belongs in the House of Commons, only not in your seat, right?
No, well, that's right. But it's true that we need her there, and we need to do all that we can to get her in there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, Glen, you are an environmentalist in your own right. You care deeply about the footprint that we leave on this planet. And you've come up with some fairly interesting thoughts on how you and I, as parliamentarians, as leaders and example setters, can actually be reducing our own footprint. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, let me just say that I'm just in this growing awareness mode, like all of us are, about the environment and how important it is. But when I started reading up just about how much we use up in carbon emissions, I decided that I would look into see if I could get my plane flights to and from Ottawa do carbon offsets. I'd heard about it from Al Gore, and he worked with a Canadian group that actually did that, and that's who he works with whenever he's within Canada. So basically what you do is you pay for how much carbon that you end up using up, and the money that you end up paying to it goes towards reforestation in British Columbia, which is taking a huge lead in this. But also 25% of our greenhouse gases come from deforestation. So it's not just that the one way to offset it is you know, to pay for that, but the other thing is we need to grow those trees back and make it work, especially with the beetle and things like that they're working in BC. So I followed examples like Elizabeth and others who's taught me well on those things, and I thought, why don't I just try it and see where it goes? So I have done that, and I put out a letter to all MPs, just giving them the various websites and saying, here's some options if you want to do it.
Now, how do we err the most? I suppose it would be on flights, correct?
That's correct. It's on flights. For instance, I've paid for all of my household per year, and plus my travel expenses. But my one trip to Africa this year, into Sudan and back, took up half of my yearly costs. Right, so flights do mean a lot. It's a little bit cheaper for prop-driven planes as opposed to jets. But really what they do is that they rate it by how many are on an airplane. So if there are 150 people on an airplane, I only pay 1/150th of it. They're not putting all the costs on me. And it's actually much more affordable. A flight to Ottawa and back, for instance, from London, Ontario, would be roughly $10. Right? So I just think it's something that we can all look at and see what we can do. And we're just at the beginning of this. It's not even an exact science, but I think like Al Gore and others have said, we've all got to creep towards this awareness. Let's do what we can, and as the science works out more and more soundly, we'll continue to be more sophisticated in our carbon offsets. But right now we're politicians, right? We're meant to lead, and that's just, I think, what we should do.
Have you had much of a response from our colleagues? Are they generally aware of this and willing to reduce their own footprints?
Well, I think a lot of the colleagues and people from other parties often don't read these emails, right? So I'm thinking of putting it out more in a printed package. But let me say I've had a good response from people from all parties, and including one independent. So which you go close to your heart. But anyway, I think it's great. I think people seem to say, well, how does it work? Where does the money go towards? Because I am interested. And part of it is we've got to be ahead of the curve. I mean, sooner or later, people are going to look at us and say, if you're taking this many trips across the country, doing the government's business, which is important, at some point, why don't you consider a carbon offset as a responsible choice? Right now, it's voluntary, and I think we should do that.
Now, have you had a response from the guy who's jet-setting around the world the most? That would be the Prime Minister. They seem to be using those government jets an awful lot.
Well, I realize that I have not had a response from him, but all he has to do is offset it and do his bit.
All right, there you go, Mr. Harper. We know you watch this every day, so when you go to the G8 and coming back, make sure that you talk to Glen and send him your money. Thank you very much, Glen. I appreciate that, and thank you for watching MPTV.